I'm Wax Mekanix, and you're listening to and watching Channa 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 podcast. Check me out. My new single is called Head. My new split on Electric Talon Records is called Blunt, and that's with a cool label mate called Troll Teeth. So stay here, stay tuned, stay loud, and stay metal.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of my podcast. We have a very special guest today joining all the way from Philadelphia. We got Wax Mekanix joining the podcast. Hi Wax.
Hey Channa, thanks for having me.
Yeah, nice to have you. And it's funny how we got together. Suddenly you came into my inbox and it's really really great.
Internet's a great thing, and I've been able to make friends all around the world with these most recent albums, and it's a lot easier now than it was 40 years ago when I was in Nitro. That's for sure. So I'm happy to be here and to be in front of all of your viewers and listeners.
Right. So Wax, tell me a little bit where are you right now, and how is the situation now? Is things back to normal where you are?
Well, I'm in a suburb of Philadelphia, so I'm not in the city proper. So I live in a nice suburban community, and here in the United States, specifically in the eastern part of the U.S., things are not really back to normal. It's better here than it is in some places, but not as good as in other places. Countries like New Zealand really have a good handle on this pandemic problem because they've done all kinds of mitigation and quarantining and isolating. They've got a smaller population than my country and yours, but here in the US, we're somewhat getting back to normal. Vaccines are readily available here in the US, so those of us that want to be vaccinated in the US are able to get them. And my family, my friends, my musician pals, we're all vaccinated, and we're starting to get into that booster shot area. So those people that want it can have it. We're still doing lots of masking in public places. I haven't been to any gigs yet, haven't done any live performances properly, simply because of the pandemic. I would imagine sometime in 2022, things will sort of get back to normal here. So how are things in your area?
Yeah, so we've been in a lockdown from March 2020 until now, but now I think things are quite relaxed and restrictions are sort of going away, but we still you need to use masks. And I think the vaccine rates are not that high here. I think only like 22% of the population is vaccinated in the Philippines right now. But I think people are still living through it. I mean, people are just making whatever best they can from the situation. So
we have a saying in America that really applies. It's called, we make lemonade out of lemons. So if we're given the lemons, we make the best lemonade we can. And that's
right.
really happened here. A lot of it is the way people perceive it. So I'm a firm believer in we're the masters of our own destiny. So we can make the best of a situation if we really want to. We have to have the help of others because this is a global situation. And we have to be careful, not only for ourselves and mindful for ourselves and our family, but also for our neighbors. So as much as I'm concerned with my immediate family, I'm concerned with people in the Philippines as well, because we can't get back to normal, whatever that is, until everyone gets back to normal.
Correct. It's I mean, just one country cannot do, they cannot just say, okay, we are done with COVID, right? Everybody else has to do the same, right?
That's true. Well, you truly are. We all thought that, this information age would bring us closer together globally. But I think in addition to that, the pandemic has really made it really pronounced and apparent to me and to most people that think deeply about it, that we are all interconnected and we are all responsible, no matter if we agree with people or not, philosophically or theologically or politically. We're interconnected biologically, and we should act accordingly. So as much as I'm concerned about my immediate family, I'm also genuinely concerned about you and your family and your neighbors as well, because we can't all get back to normal we can't get back to normal locally unless we're back to normal globally.
Right. So Wax, when did you last perform live?
If you want to know the honest truth, it was about 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
But let me qualify that. So I don't know if they have it in the Philippines that much. I think it's everywhere because I've traveled the world and it seems to be every place. It's this activity called busking. You know, people going out on the streets and
Right.
doing their performance live, sort of without a net, without a built-in audience. And I do that when I can during the pandemic for all kinds of reasons. So that's the immediate answer is I was out busking outside the studio about 3 weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago. And that was that's an invigorating experience. You know, you open up the guitar case, which is my weapon of choice, and you just start playing for passersby, and there's no built-in audience. So it's dangerous. It's kind of punk. It's invigorating, and I've been a musician for more than 40 years, so it helps me to reconnect with that and to honestly, I was testing out new songs and making sure I could actually do it. So I've done that a few times during the pandemic. I haven't played properly for it's got to be more than 2 years, you know, with a band and with an audience in a club, that kind of thing. So are
Right.
there live performances coming back in the Philippines?
Yes,
Are they
just like maybe 2 weeks ago, we started having acoustic sets in clubs, not clubs, but like places like Hard Rock Cafe. They started some live performances, but I couldn't really go yet because it's not really convenient because we had a curfew as well. But now just 2 days ago the curfew is lifted as well, so I would probably go and watch some of these acts soon.
Well, we have to do it slowly, we have to do it carefully, and we have to do it mindfully for all those reasons we just talked about, not just for our own safety, but for the safety of the others that are going to be there. So I'm not masked up when I'm playing live when I'm busking because I keep a bit of a distance from those people that are passing by. Sometimes I'll have people that'll stop and want to listen a bit, and that's fun. And we all kind of know that we're supposed to be distanced. So it's this common mutual respect. They'll have masks on, but I won't because you can't really sing with a mask on. It's a little difficult. So we're kind of figuring it out as we go, making lemonades out of lemons.
Right. So when I saw your picture and when I'm seeing you now, I can't imagine that you were the same guy who played in a hard rock band like Nitro.
Well, I just passed my 59th birthday, so that gives the age away. So we formed in 1980, and I was in my teens at that point. So had much more hair at that point. Didn't have as much gray going on. But yeah, it was fun. People evolve, things change. I have to be honest with you, that initial fire that was in me before I joined Nitro, and as we were making those records and doing all that snarling, slamming, howling, cranked to 11 heavy rock, that's still within me. And I think you can hear it on some of my latest records as well. Even though the outside has changed a little bit, the inside is still the same. I have to be honest with you. But yeah,
Right.
I've people change. You know, I'm about the same height, about the same weight, a little grayer, a little less on top. But and my eyes aren't as good as they used to be. But so far, it's been a fun experience, and I'm kind of learning this as I go in terms of growing into it. But yeah, I have to be honest with you, Channa. I'm the youngest one of the band in Nitro, so I'm the baby. So the other guys are.
Right. So
I'm the more handsome one in the band. That's what I keep
right,
telling
right,
them.
right, for sure. So Wax, can you tell me a little bit about your childhood and what's your earliest memory of music?
Wow, that's an easy one because this one is seared in my memory, and I've recounted this before. It was probably about 1966. So I was born in the early 60s, and it was about 1966, and I grew up in this small town in central Pennsylvania, which is in the eastern part of the United States. Very small town, quintessential America. And I was probably about 4 years old at the time, and my mother and I were walking through a department store, and I'm holding her hand, and I hear wafting in the distance this incredible melodic, fun cacophony of music. And it was from the record department of the department store. And I got a little closer, and I heard this joyous noise that made me want to skip along like a little child does. And it had a really fun sing-song chorus to it. And it went, "We all live in a yellow submarine, a yellow submarine." And that was the Beatles. That's my first memory of that I can recall of music that really struck me. And all these years later, I remember holding my mother's hand, skipping along in the department store, singing almost immediately the chorus to Yellow Submarine by the Beatles. So it had probably just been released. It was on the Beatles' Revolver album, famous record, and Yellow Submarine's a worldwide hit, and everybody knows about it. It seemed to be custom made for a toddler of my age, and it was just this joyous experience. And it was my favorite song from that time until today. It's one of my favorite songs. And my mother always was making fun of me whenever it would come on the radio, and she would say, "Do you remember when you heard that song at the department store and were skipping and singing along with it?" She goes, "I kind of knew you would be some sort of a musician at that point." That's my
Yeah.
earliest memory.
Wow. I mean, Beatles, what really fascinates me is like that song, for example, that you can play that to a kid and it can be like a kid song, right? It's that
Absolutely.
simple. It's that simple, but they have that variety of very simple songs, but there's so many complex songs, and even like a music critic can like like they can critique about it. It's so complex. There's so much mastery. I mean, I could imagine. I mean, it's so fascinating, the whole music of Beatles, right?
Well, I have to admit that they are, because it's of my generation. I grew up with that stuff, so it's part of my musical DNA.
Right.
So just because of familiarity, it's special to me. But as I looked at it analytically, and being a musician myself, I took them apart over time. I played them in many bands and many gigs over the years. It spans the spectrum of genres. They'll do something as heavy and as punk and as prototype metal as Helter Skelter off the White Album, to something Baroque and classical like Eleanor Rigby,
Right.
and everything in between. They did folk, they did pop. And if you're a musician and you learn that stuff, it's pretty complex in some places and it's very simple in others. And I still hold them as some of the gold standard. And they're arguably the best composers of the 20th century, I think. That's my own personal bent. People will beg to differ, but it resonated with me as a child. And I remember thinking, I had this moment as a little guy thinking about it. It's just amazing that they took all this effort and made all this effort to write a song for children. I thought that was remarkable. I didn't know at the time what they were doing. I didn't know anything about the music business or how groups worked. I was just a little kid who loved the song. And I thought, that's just wonderful that they took the time to make a song for little kids like me. And then I still appreciate it at this age. And I have to be honest with you, today I was listening to Abbey Road and was still getting the same thrill. So all those years later, they've stood the test of time, and anybody can argue about the quality of it, whether they like it or not. But I personally think it's some of the best music that's been made in the 20th century. And I'm really pleased that Paul McCartney is still alive and is still making records and can be appreciated.
Yeah, I actually saw your Facebook post that you said that, I mean, you're grateful that you're still alive while Paul McCartney is there, right?
Oh yeah, let me see if I can remember. I thank God that I'm alive while Paul McCartney walks the earth. So
Um,
that's pretty dramatic, but that really sums up how I feel about it. I wanted to make. I'm not really a demonstrative guy, but I want to make sure that when I'm passionate about something that needs to be appreciated, that I communicate it. And because it's my sort of vocation and my genre of choice, I want to make sure people know exactly where I stand. And I'll say the same thing about Brian Wilson, about Bob Dylan, about Paul Simon, about Angus Young. You know, those kinds of people.
right. There is this there's a video in YouTube. This is Ozzy Osbourne of Black Sabbath, right? Ozzy Osbourne meets Paul McCartney, and Ozzy Osbourne becomes like a fan, like what you call that fanboy. Like he's so
Yeah.
inspired that he's saying, and he's telling Paul that like Beatles were an inspiration for Black Sabbath. Like that's why they actually pursued music. It's really touching video. Like you won't expect, like Prince of Darkness to like, he's Prince of Darkness, right? Like would be just so humble.
It's amazing. I think personally, I don't know him obviously, but I think personally, Ozzy is a very simple guy and isn't taken with his stardom too much, and isn't overreacting to his fame, etc. But when you're in the company of somebody like Paul McCartney, I would imagine it's really hard not to be humbled and not to be a fanboy or a fangirl because of the way that he's influenced people that are musicians. And I do know that Ozzy, I'm a big fan of Ozzy Osbourne's early career, solo career, and with Black Sabbath. And I've read somewhere where he and Randy Rhoads were getting together. Randy being his initial guitarist when he went solo. They were writing "Goodbye to Romance," and there was a discussion that Randy, I think, recounted that Ozzy wanted it to sound Beatle-esque, and that was pretty interesting. You come out with the song "Goodbye to Romance," which is a bit of a ballad off the first album, Blizzard of Oz, and at its core is the emphasis of the Beatles. So you really can't get away from it.
Right.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. So Wax, you were a child during all this, Woodstock, hippie culture, free love. How was that? Do you remember about those times?
Well, I do. So I was born in 1962. So through the 60s, I was just a child. So I was going to grade school, a primary school. And I do remember the culture. We were small town in where I lived. So it wasn't that apparent, but we were close to a major university. And I remember that into our small town would filter in hippies and those people that were dressed in colorful clothes and those people that had long hair. And there were music festivals occasionally at the university. And I do remember those kinds of things. Even though I was, under 10 years old whenever the 60s finished, I do remember that culture was permeating everywhere. It seemed to be a positive thing. There were overtones of the Vietnam War that were going on, if you remember that. We were in Southeast Asia at the time. And I do remember that we had this duality to our society. On one side was all this overbearing pressure of the Vietnam War that we were being inundated with in the news. And I remember hearing that, and I couldn't understand it because I was a child. I couldn't understand it in great detail, but I knew that it wasn't a good thing, obviously. And then we had these young people that were part of the hippie culture and the 60s. So that was very colorful. It was positive. I remember the experience as being real liberating. And I remember thinking, well, I really liked, because I had relatives that were in the military, I was really somewhat torn between, I didn't know if I wanted to be in the military or if I wanted to be a musician and be in the hippie culture. So I was being pulled in two different directions, even at a young age. And I think I was one of many American children that felt the pressures of those two cultures coming together. But all in all, it was a real positive experience, the hippie culture. I didn't really get to experience, obviously, any of the the downside of it, like the drugs and the stuff like Altamont and all that. It was mostly peace, love, and understanding that I was getting at that age.
Right. So hearing Beatles and you remembering that song, when did you figure out that you want to actually pursue music?
Well, formally, it was probably at about 10 or 11 years old that there was a guitar in my house. And I remember, I remember picking it up and I remember playing it and trying to figure it out. And nobody sort of owned it. It just was there. My dad was a bit of a collector of things. So sometimes things would appear and then they would disappear. And I remember the guitar appearing for a few years and I started to play with it and try to figure it out. And nobody knew how to play it. But I remember playing it a bit, and I remember being infatuated by the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and all those mid to late 60s cultures, Jimi Hendrix, and all that stuff that was coming across the radio and the television. And I was trying to learn how to play the guitar, and then the guitar disappeared because my dad sold it because it was a piece of merchandise that he brought into his business, and then it went out. So at that point, I was a bit disappointed, and I was playing around on the harmonica as well. And then I was probably about 12 or 13 years old. I wanted to get a drum set because I was infatuated. This was the early 70s. I was infatuated with hard rock at that point. The Who, Kiss, Led Zeppelin, and a friend of mine had a drum set, and I said I wanted one, and my parents said no, I couldn't have one because it was noisy and it was expensive. So I saved up my money, got my odd jobs, and I bought it myself. So probably at 13 or 14 years old, I bought my first drum set and taught myself how to play the drums. And then I kept on picking away at guitars at friends' houses that had them, and I eventually got one probably when I was about 16 years old and started to learn chords in earnest. But there was nobody in my family that was musical. I kind of picked it up on my own. I didn't really, it was just fun. You know, I was a bit creative as a kid. Always, I was writing poetry, I was writing short stories, I was painting, I was drawing. I was infatuated by photography and all kinds of art. So I was a creative kid, and music was just one of those things. And I pursued all those things kind of equally. And music I kind of fell into because as a teenager, you know, a teenage boy in America in the 70s, you want to be in a rock band. So that's what I did.
Right, right. So tell me, how did you get into Nitro?
Well, that was fun. The short version of a very long story is, at about 16 years old, I got a job at a supermarket as a regular laborer, a box boy, stocking shelves and things like that at a supermarket. And one of the guys there that I made friends with, my friend Bob Homan, and Bob will probably be watching this at some point. So Bob Homan is my friend there, and I'm 16 and he's probably about 25. So I was looking up to him as a big brother. And we got to talking and got to be friendly, and he learned that I was a drummer. And he told me about his friends that had a band and they were looking for a drummer. And I said, well, will you introduce me to these guys? And my friend Bob said, no, Tim, you're not ready. So eventually what I did was I convinced him over the years to introduce me to those friends. And those friends were John Hazel and Brad Gensimore, who are the guitarist and bassist of Nitro. And I eventually, in 1980, got an audition with them. And among the 20 or so guys that auditioned, somehow I was able to convince them that I could play louder, harder, and faster than any of the other guys. That's how I got into Nitro. So in the summer of 1980, I auditioned for Nitro, and it was John Hazel, Brad Gensimore, and a couple of other guys that eventually left the band. And I was drafted and given the drummer's seat, and away we went.
Right, right. So what are the memorable gigs of Nitro? I mean, you guys played.
Well, we played for, we were really active and played solidly from about 1980 till about 1985. So there was a good 5 years in there where we were playing 3-4 nights a week. And it was mostly playing local bars and parties and things like that. And probably at about somewhere in 1981, we decided we were writing our own music at that point, because we were fans of British rock and American rock, you know, heavy stuff like Judas Priest and Led Zeppelin and Kiss and Aerosmith and Boston and Black Sabbath and Rainbow and Deep Purple. That kind of stuff really fascinated us. So we were writing our own songs, and it just kind of happened organically. And one day we decided to go into the studio and make a demo tape. And when we made a demo tape of our original songs, that was in that was in the fall of 1981. So it's 40 years almost to this month that we went into the studio to record our first album. And then we started to gig around and eventually started to build a following. Now, the answer to the question is, the most memorable that I have is probably about 1983. There was an American band that was on Atlantic Records called Kix, K-I-X, sort of a glam kind of band from the 80s. And they were from Maryland, which was close to Pennsylvania. And somehow we got on the bill with them a few times in a few different places. And those were really memorable because we were playing all originals from our albums at that point. And this was 1983. And we did a few gigs with them. And those gigs really were memorable because the audience knew our stuff. And they were large audiences, a few thousand people. And at the time, everything sort of came together really well. We were performing really well. We were performing all of our original stuff. And we were on the cusp of getting a record deal with Mausoleum Records in Belgium. So we were feeling pretty good. And I remember one specific gig with Kix. We were opening up for them in Altoona. And everything was happening just perfectly. The crowd knew our stuff. We were playing well. The sound system was good. We were having a good night. And for some reason, I'm sitting back there in the middle of this set saying, this is a really great gig. It's different than the hundreds of others that we've played, and I need to remember it. There's something special about it. I can't really explain all the details as well as I could. Those people that are musicians that have experienced that know exactly what I mean. It's called being in the zone. Those people that have never experienced it, no matter what I say, I couldn't really explain it adequately. So those musicians out there know what I'm talking about. When things seem to slow down and you can sense everything in the room, that kind of happens rarely. And I remember that happening in September of 1983 when we were opening up for Kicks in, I believe, Altoona, Pennsylvania. It was a beautiful thing, and I still remember it to this day.
Right, right. So, so you had a good run. You said that until like 1985 with Nitro. So where is this Wax Mekanix comes in? At what point does this character appears?
Well, myself and John Hazel in Nitro, we were the primary writers in the band. So those of us that are musicians, and I had kind of been writing songs and lyrics and poems and things like that from the time I can remember writing. So it was a natural thing for me. So I continue to write whether I'm making records or music or not. They're like shark's teeth, there's always one behind the other. So right. There's always something in the pipeline. And that's great and that's fun. And I do that whether people were listening and watching or not. So John Hazel and I were writing the songs for Nitro, and about 1985, we had finished our run, and we continued to write. I continued to write and continued to perform a bit solo, sort of busking, and we played with some other bands, some other pickup bands, and then we took a break. We had families and went on and remained friends. The band never formally broke up, and we're still together to this day. There's no end to Nitro, so all the original members were still friends, and we haven't gotten together for a while because of the pandemic. But probably at about I'd say 2001 or 2002, I started to play in earnest a bunch of songs that I was writing that all seemed to have the same voice to them. They were different than Nitro. And I found that I was really enjoying doing that, and didn't look like we were going to be doing any more Nitro records anytime soon. So I decided that I was going to go perform live, and started busking in the street like I've described. And people were asking me who I was, and I decided that I wasn't going to go by my name that I was using in Nitro, because I wanted to sort of get outside myself and write from a different perspective. So like Freddie Mercury of Queen, or Elton John, or Ringo Starr, or Eminem, or Jay-Z, or Lil Wayne, I created Wax Mekanix. And that helped to free me up to be able to look at my music from a different perspective. So I see it as this in the same way as doing that, the way Bob Dylan reinvented himself. I did it not to hide from anything. I did it to free myself up, to give myself a different perspective. So probably in the early 2000s, I started to write in earnest from that perspective, and it was liberating. I had written all kinds of songs for years and years and years before, and this particular perspective sort of gave me a new creative outlet, and I was writing from a different place. It was liberating. So I stuck with it and started to do it in earnest, and was playing with Nitro a little bit now and again. We recorded and re-released some stuff, and we're still friends. And so I was doing them in tandem. So to differentiate myself from Nitro, I decided that I was going to really make a bit of an effort to perform as Wax Mekanix and write as Wax Mekanix. So that's what I was doing. And probably about 2019, Electric Talon Records got wind of some of my stuff and said, "Do you want to do some records?" And I said, "Sure." And that's where we're at today.
Right, right. Wax, I saw this video you put out, a short clip called Nitro History, something like that. You had some Nitro days, like old VHS kind of, videos and stuff. Like, is Nitro music available somewhere that we can listen to?
Absolutely, at Bandcamp. So it's Nitro USA at Bandcamp. I'll send you the link, and you can then offer it up to your listeners. Yes, you can get it there. There's vinyl available. There are CDs available. There are cassettes available. There are downloads available. So yes, the wonder of the internet will enable us to do that. And I have some Nitro vinyl even on my wall, as you can see right there. So it's
Right.
available. So we've got cassettes, CDs. So there have been a bunch of reissues of Nitro material since our initial run. So we had released a 10-inch vinyl EP in the early 80s. That was a do-it-yourself thing. That got us signed to a European label. And we released with Mausoleum Records, Lethal Plus 2. And then we started working on a follow-up to that, which was right there, Volatile Activity. And those are the Nitro records on vinyl. And we've done some other reissues as well through Skull Records, through Blood and Iron Records, and through AOR Records as well. So lots of stuff. I'll send you the link and you can share it with your listeners and your viewers. And please drop by and pick some stuff up. It's a lot of fun.
Right, right. So I actually listened to your solo, Wax Mekanix songs. You have an album called Mobocracy, and one of the songs that really I got connected with, that really resonated with me, is this song called All Freaks. Because
yeah.
Because as a metalhead, I feel that, when I hang out with my metal, sort of community friends, we all like kind of like freaks. We like horror films, we like pop, all this stuff that other people seem to like, they don't really care about sometimes, but we all like into it. And so it really resonated with me, that All Freaks. Can you tell me a little bit about that song?
Sure. Well, thanks a lot. That's thrilling and humbling for me that people connect with it, with my songs, and I really appreciate that. So first of all, let me say thanks. All Freaks is the whole album. Mobocracy was my outlet for some of the aggressive Nitro style heavy rock, but I wanted to update it. And All Freaks was one of those songs that has this interesting punk edge to it. So lyrically, it's about what you've just stated, that we all feel somewhat like outsiders. You do, I do, our friends do, and especially those of us that like metal, we feel a bit unique in our categorization, and our friends are more like our family than they are anything else. So I felt a bit freakish, especially here in America, because of all the social and political things that were going on. So that was kind of what I was thinking about when I was writing the lyric, was that we have this polarization politically and socially going on in the US. So I was making a commentary about that. We've got conservative and liberal points of view. And one group would point to the other and say, you guys are really freaks and you're wrong and you're the enemy. So I wanted to put that in a bit of a poetic way. So lyrically, I wanted to get that across, which was to sort of say, here's what I'm getting here in America, and it's coming out this way in my music. And the whole album, Mobocracy, is a bit of a statement on this turmoil and thrashing around that America was going through from about 2015 and is still going through now. The music of All Freaks was really fun to do, because if you listen to some of those early Nitro records, it's really punkish, it's aggressive, it's fast and howling and snarling and strident. So that's a big part of my musical DNA. Even though I'm this guy at this age, still inside is that 19-year-old fellow that wants to crank those songs that are on that album right there. I love that stuff. And All Freaks was my way of doing it. Additionally, even though I'm a big fan of metal like Motorhead, Ace of Spades, the DNA of Ace of Spades is in there. And if you listen to the beginning of that, I shout, I don't want to live forever. That's Lemmy from Ace of Spades. And Lemmy had just passed away when I was making that record. So that was my homage to him and me paying respect to Lemmy, who was a huge influence on me. And so it's got a little bit of that Motorhead in it. It's got early Nitro in it. And I have to admit that I'm a big fan of all kinds of music. And specifically growing up in the 70s, I was a big fan of Elvis Costello. Now, he's not metal, but I wanted to take some of that aggressive punk nature that he had. I was a fan of the MC5, the New York Dolls, and the Ramones, and Elvis Costello. As much as I was a metalhead, I liked that kind of stuff too. So I wanted to bring that punk ethos into it. And I remember thinking when I was writing it, I wanted to do something that sort of felt like that punky, aggressive Elvis Costello, Ramones, Motorhead mix that had some Nitro in it. And that's where I got the music from. I wanted it to be poppy as well because I'm a fan of pop music, and I told you about my affection for the Beatles. They're a huge influence. So it's really a mix of all that. Even though at heart, my records are usually metal when they come out, they also have a pop edge to them, and I'm incorporating some of that punk stuff. So there's a big homage to my influences in that record as well. So All Freaks is one of my favorites because of the reasons that you've described. It resonates with me personally because I feel a bit freakish when I'm with my friends that are metalheads and musicians, because we feel like we're isolated in our own little community. But I wanted to make sure that I was infusing it with all those other elements that make me happy when I'm making music.
Right. I mean, not only in America, everywhere, even here and everywhere else, this polarization of about politics or social issues or whatever. What seems to be the problem? Because what I feel is people are just trying to be right, then other they just want to be right. They don't really try to listen and understand the point of view of the other side. It's always like, no, we are right, our opinion is the right opinion. And is that the case? What do you think, that why this so much polarization is happening? And
Well, I think, well, first of all, I think that's just the way people are. If we look throughout history, polarization has always been there. You've got people that are deep thinkers and people that are emotional thinkers, and they react emotionally. And I'm pretty well convinced, and I think that history will look back on this and confirm that the way that we consume data now through the internet and social media simply amplifies those things and drives people more toward the fringes. And we're tribal in a way, whether it's economically, whether it's politically, whether it's socially, whether it's theologically, spiritually. We love to be in our tribes, and we love to identify with our groups. And I think this is one of the reasons why we're seeing this polarization now. I'm an optimist, and I like to think that we're kind of in this adolescence of managing social media and how we interact with each other. I think that we're not going to be like this always, all the time, because I think cooler heads will prevail. Because I've traveled the world for all kinds of in all kinds of places for all kinds of reasons, and I find that people are basically the same everywhere. Wherever you are in the world, wherever I am in the world, we want the same things. We want happiness, we want prosperity, we want fairness, and we want kindness and understanding and patience, and that's universal. And that's the thing that's kind of lacking here with social media amplifying all of these aggressive opinions. And we're pretty fierce about our opinions too. So I think we haven't changed as a species. I think that the tools that we have at our disposal have amplified those characteristics. And there's a weaponization that kind of takes place, I think. And we've all felt that, the weaponization of data. And it's turned neighbor against neighbor in a way that I'm hoping is not an infinite sort of time loop. But I think we'll get past it. And it's going to take some time. And I'm hoping that comes sooner than later. So this polarization is everywhere. I've seen it in all different countries that I've visited and all different cultures. It's a shame, but what I try to do is to try to be understanding of somebody else. I'm not perfect, and I make mistakes and I have my own personal views, but I don't want to impose them on other people. And I certainly don't want to be aggressive and mean whenever I'm trying to voice my opinion. It's just my own personal style. In America, it's really pronounced because we're on this 24/7 media cycle that everyone wants to be right. So I think you've summed it up. People just want to be right and they want to defend their tribe and their position. That's human nature. And I think we have to be a little more kind to each other. And that's what I try to get across in my own personal life.
right. So you actually did a split EP with the band Troll Teeth, right? From the same label, the Electric Talon Records, right? So it's called Blunt.
Yeah.
I don't know what you mean by you guys mean by blunt, like
Well, there's a purpose to it, and the word blunt has a dual meaning,
Right.
and the dual meaning, you can take it as an adjective, which is somebody that is forthright and tells it like it is. And that's what we wanted the record to be like. We wanted it to be visceral. We wanted it to be plain spoken. We didn't want there to be any pussyfooting around or walking on eggshells. And both Troll Teeth and the guys in Troll Teeth and I discussed this. And when we were picking a title, we decided that of the candidates that we had, that blunt really summed it up. You can also use it as a noun, which is a large marijuana cigarette. Now, those days of smoking marijuana for me are gone, long gone. But those people that like to do that, it's legal in some parts of the world, and it's not. My own personal view is unimportant, but blunt also lent us this psychedelic connotation that we were looking for as well. So we thought that was fun. So there's a duality to it. So the word blunt was meant to have a dual purpose, and I think we've achieved that.
Right. Tell me a little bit about the band Troll Teeth and how did the idea came to do an actual split with them?
Well, first of all, Troll Teeth is they're a three-piece band, and they do this interesting stoner, fuzz, doom kind of heavy rock, which I really love. And they were on Electric Talon. And when I was first signed to the label, I learned of them, and I listened to their record "Goes Nowhere, Does Nothing," and it's a brilliant album. Mo and the guys, Thuds and Pretty Boy, those guys are amazingly talented musicians that do this unique type of rock that I really, really like. So it's thoughtful, it's really precise and interesting, it's heavy, and all their fans, it speaks for itself. So me singing their praises really isn't anything they need, but I really like them. So when Electric Talon came to me and said, okay, Mobocracy is doing pretty good, and what do you want to do next? And I said, well, what's interesting to do? And Stephen Burdick, who's the head of Electric Talon, said, well, if you like, you can do a split, you can do a solo album, you can do some singles, whatever you'd like to do. And I said, well, tell me about this split idea. And he did. And I said, can I do one with Troll Teeth? Because I really like that album, Goes Nowhere, Does Nothing. And he said, sure. So I got together with them. They said, here are our songs. What are you going to bring to the table? And I brought my 3 tunes, and I loved what they brought. And I think they approved of what I did, because it ended up on the record. And then we hung out a little bit, got to know each other in a more personal way, even though it was difficult during the pandemic, because this came together during the pandemic. We did get together for some photos and such like that, but we didn't hang out like at shows just yet, because we weren't playing any. In any case, that's how we came together. It was really organic. There was nothing pressured, nothing forced. Like those guys, really like their records. They're going to be making some more really soon, and I'm looking forward to those. They gave us a taste of what's to come with the 2 that they put on Blunt, and I'm really proud to be on that record with them. And I think I got more out of it from them than they got out of it from me. So I was the benefactor or the beneficiary of that.
Right. So you had a song called Head, which I think it's your primary single on that one, and you have a
Yep.
you have accompanying music video as well. How is the response to that song, Wax?
Well, I was really pleased with the final product, and so, but I didn't know how it was going to be received, because Mobocracy was all guitars and drums and bass and howling metal record cranked up to 11, and I kind of switched it up a little bit and got a little bit more organic and tribal, and there were no guitars cranked to 11 on that, but I wanted it to be heavy and thunderous. So I was looking for something a bit different, and I was a bit concerned that those people that were expecting Mobocracy 2.0 were going to be a bit disappointed. But critically, the reviews I've been getting have been pretty good. The response, which is more important to me from the audience, has been really supportive. I don't underestimate the taste or the intelligence or the flexibility of my audience, because they know about how I like to change things up. And they've been really receptive to it. And it's happened from all over the world, not just America, but all throughout Europe, Scandinavia, South America, Mexico, Eastern Europe, just starting to get some feedback from the Far East. I've been really pleased, and I'm just thrilled, and I feel really blessed that it's been received well. No one has really come to me and said, that sucks. I was kind of expecting that from some of the really heavy duty metal folks, but I think they've kind of accepted that this is the kind of artist that I am, and that they're just going to have to follow me, and we'll see what happens. So far, I've been really lucky that it's been well received.
Right. So if you have to explain to somebody who Wax Mekanix is musically, how would you describe?
I'm a product of my influences. So I'm a solo artist, and what I do is I'm primarily a songwriter. So that's always been constant. So my first job, my primary job, from Nitro up until now, has been to be a songwriter. That's what I see myself as. Then I'm a guitarist, I'm a drummer, I'm a producer. I play all kinds of other instruments. On Blunt, there's a song called Freak Boutique, which there's some harmonica on that. And I do all the vocals. I do some of the vocals, some of the backing vocals as well. I do all the lead vocals. So, and I'll go out and perform that stuff. I also, other than music, I'm a painter and I'm a photographer. And I have another separate profession that keeps the bills paid, and I'm an engineer. So Wax Mekanix is an accumulation of all that stuff. So I bring all of those things to it. And my influences, we've talked about some of them. They range everything from Robert Johnson, who was an old blues guy from the 1930s, up to AC/DC and Crowbot and Ghost and Slipknot and Otmar Liebert and classical music, and just you name it, it goes into my memory bank, and I draw from it. The Beatles are huge for me. The Beach Boys, Queen, Led Zeppelin, Judas Priest, Deep Purple, all that stuff from the 70s, American rock, The Police, from the UK, you name it. I love it all. And I don't really segregate myself into a metal category, even though I like guitars, bass, and drums primarily. And because of my history with Nitro, I wear that proudly. But if you listen to some of my records, solo records, you'll hear that there are things on there that my mission statement isn't just drums, bass, guitar turned up to 11 and strident, snarling, and howling. There's some other textures that might sound a little bit like Led Zeppelin, and there's some modern influences, some electronic and industrial stuff in there too. That's a long answer, but you asked.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Slipknot. The reason I have to move our interview to an earlier time is because I'm actually going to watch the NotFest live stream later.
That's great. You can bump me anytime for that, my friend. That's amazing. We have to be prioritized, and absolutely, I appreciate that. And that's a good reason to bump it.
Yes, because I was supposed to watch Slipknot in the Philippines last year, but I still have the ticket. I mean, the show is not officially canceled. It's like just keep on postponing. Like I think it's now 2022. So I'm actually excited to at least see them through live stream, right? So
these live gigs will come back. You have to be patient, and you're doing. I have to applaud you because you're supporting them through these alternate means. And I know that you're a sophisticated guy and you support the genre, but more so for, I guess, the rest of the people that might be listening and watching, is that we have to be creative, as creative as the artists are. As an audience, we have to be as equally creative to be able to support them. Especially now, whenever record sales are not what they used to be. All that sustenance that artists got from live performances by selling merchandise and such was gone. So we have to support these artists as best we can. And you're an example of that. This is perfect. So I applaud you. Well done.
Right. So you keep on pointing out that it's not Mobocracy 2.0, but is eventually there will be a Mobocracy 2.0? Is there a new album coming out?
Well, there sure is. On the horizon, well, first of all, Blunt was just released October 22nd. So we're in the midst of this and we're enjoying it. But as you know, with artists, and as I stated earlier, songs are like shark's teeth for me. There's one behind the other. So I have been working on my next project. There are two actually that I'm doing in parallel, and I'm not sure which one's going to come out first. So the next one, which I think will come out first, is another split that I was asked to do with an American band called Almost Honest. Now, they're not on Electric Talon, but I got to know them through Electric Talon, and we're doing something really special and unique. And yes, there will be heavy guitars on it. And yes, it'll be sort of like Mobocracy, but it won't be exactly like Mobocracy. I'm not a fan of repeating myself, and my audience knows to expect some changes. And I kind of follow the songs and the music more than I do lead it anywhere. So it's not this deliberate approach to be different. I just kind of follow the songs where they take me. So Mobocracy wanted to be heavy and cranked to 11 and howling and snarling. And Blunt wanted to be something that was more thunderous and tribal and organic. And these new songs, they want to be something different. And I'm not going to tell you exactly what it is because I don't want to spoil the surprise, but it's going to be different. And yes, there will be heavy guitars on it. So that split's probably going to be coming out next, and that's probably in 2022. In parallel with that, I'm working on a solo album, which is about 70% done. And it's going to be different than those three things I've just talked about. And I'm not exactly sure what shape it's going to take, but I don't think my audience that follows me will be disappointed or surprised that I've made another change. It's a change that's not dramatic, but it's something that's interesting to me. And I think that any audience that follows me will be interested in those things that I'm interested in. So if I like it, I'm assuming they're going to like it. And that's what I think they want me to do as an artist, is to be true to my inspiration. So that's what I'm going to follow. That served me well for 40 years, Channa. So I'm going to continue to do it that way.
Right. So Wax, what's your message to the viewers of this video and people who's going to listen to this podcast?
Well, it's pretty simple. There are two parts to this. One is, first of all, I want to thank everybody that takes their time to seek me out and to give me a listen. I know that there is a literal torrent of music that goes out every day across the internet, and that audiences have the choice to listen to all kinds of things. And I'm genuinely thrilled and humbled when people say that they've listened to my stuff, and that never changes. So that appreciation that I have for those folks that listen to me is genuine, and I want to make sure that they understand that. So thank you for taking the time to listen to me. Thank you for having me here, because I know all of the artists that are interested in having your time. So I really appreciate what you do and how you do it, and especially that you've given me the time to be here with you and your listeners. The final thing that I want to say is that these times that we're in, whether it's due to the pandemic or due to the polarization that we have in our lives with our neighbors, it's not going to last forever. So I would urge people to look around, to be kind to each other, to be patient with each other, and to show a bit of appreciation for each other. And that's going to help us to get out of this a lot quicker and to make all of our lives a lot better. And one thing that I really do live by, the last thing that I'll say is this, that if there's somebody in your life that you love, tell them that you love them.
Right. Yeah, I think really this when I see all this pandemic, people dying in ICUs and all that, I think what you said is most important thing, right? You don't know what can happen to you. Like next split second, you might not be here anymore. So it's always better to say these things and hug people, kiss people. I always do that. My I have a 12-year-old son, so I've been um, through the years, every day, the first thing I would do in the morning is just give him a kiss, give him a hug, because he's 12 years old. He's now probably don't want to do it anymore, but I still tell him that I love him, right? Like, you have to
I
do
think
it.
every child needs to hear that from their parents.
Mm,
I have a son who's is 24 years old, independent, brilliant, self-sufficient. He's a man on his own. I grab him at least once a week, if not once a day when I can, wrap my arms around him, hold him tight, and tell him that I love him, because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And I want him to know that he's still loved by his father. So I think any parent should do that. And I do that with my extended family as well. That's my own personal way of going about things, and that's my own style. So I find it works well, but there's no harm in telling those people that you love, or more specifically, those people that you love, show them that you love them in some way that makes it meaningful for you and for them.
right. Wax, anybody you want to shout out to?
Yes. First of all, I want to thank you, because you're super cool for having me on here, and I love what you do. This is not easy to do, and we appreciate it. Artists on this side of the screen appreciate what you do. So I genuinely want to thank you for that. This is great. I love making friends all over the world, and hopefully one day we'll be able to shake hands, and I'll give you a hug and buy you a beer if you like, and we'll take in a show together. And I want to shout out to my fans and tell them thank you. We'll get it through this, and bear with me. 2022 is coming, and hopefully we'll get some gigs and come out and see me. I want to also thank Electric Talent for sticking with me. They've been really cool, and Stephen Burdick has been great. So go out and patronize all of those people that you like. Support them now, because now is when they need it.
Right. So Wax, I mean, I really enjoy talking to you, this conversation, and listening to you, the appreciation you have for like all these different types of music. I see, I mean, I see a connection, because I'm a person like that. Although I'm a metalhead, I listen to so many different music. I appreciate, you know, the culture. I appreciate the artists, and I always try to support. So I felt a very deep connection when we were talking about Beatles, Motorhead, and Slipknot and all that, right? So I'm looking forward to your new songs, and I'm definitely going to go and check out the Nitro songs on Bandcamp. So lastly, tell everyone how they can listen to your songs and how they can buy your merch and things like that.
Well, I'm on all the socials, so you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Bandcamp. Wax Mekanix, Waxmekanix, and you've got those links that are available. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, let's see, Twitter, and I also some of my other work is on Big Cartel, and some of my work with Nitro is on Bandcamp as well. I will make all of those links available to you. And if you just Google me, you'll find me on any of those socials, and all the links will be there.
Right. So, Wax, thanks for joining the podcast. Have a great night ahead.
Channa, thank you very much. Stay safe and well.
Thank you.